internship, I worked with Dr. McAllister in a new internship. It was a macro practice internship. And we also had two other interns, Martina Hall, and she spoke earlier a couple weeks ago about what we did, and also Jordan Zeller. So essentially what we did is we worked with the LGBTQIA plus community. We created a needs assessment for them, and then we became safe zone trained in order to train others. We named our project Project Affirm Beyond the Rainbow. One of the first things we did in this internship is Dr. McAllister actually provided a list of basically the strengths and weaknesses of a community, and she wanted us to go over this with her to look at this community in a strengths perspective way. She spoke about how when you do macro practice and you're in an area, you need to understand the strengths and weaknesses and the history of the community. So the first thing we talked about was some of the strengths. And one of the things on the list was the community gathering together, uniting for a purpose. And she highlighted how we did this for CODA, and it was a strength of Terre Haute that when people were in need, they seemed to gather together to support them, especially organizations. CODA was a great example of this. She used about how when it lost funding, people gathered around and local businesses really supported it. She also discussed some of the weaknesses of the community. Something that Martini talked about was how Terre Haute kind of has this good old boy perspective in that it doesn't really change. The population and the policies, they remain the same, and though people push for change, it's not that big of a push. That just kind of stays the same. It's kind of a stagnant area for that, and we discussed that a little bit. And then we discussed the unique history of Terre Haute. And Dr. McAllister spoke about how each of these three aspects, are important in macro practice, and that when we understand communities and what we're coming into and their history and their strengths and their weaknesses, we can better serve the populations we're working with. So one of the first things we did after this initial meeting was research. So we wanted to know if there'd been any assessments or surveys done on towns in Indiana, specifically Terre Haute, and we found that the Human Rights Campaign had done a survey of resources available to the LGBTQIA plus community in 9 cities in Indiana. These included Indianapolis, Terre Haute, Bloomington, Muncie, Hammond, Evansville, and they scored it on 100 out of 100 basically. Terre Haute in 2016 scored 39 out of 100 for resources available for the LGBTQIA plus community, whereas Indianapolis scored an 87 out of 100. Bloomington was 100 out of 100. And then 3 years later, they came back and they did the same assessment. In 2019, Terre Haute was 42 out of 100. Bloomington was still 100 out of 100, and Indianapolis had increased to 89 out of 100. So there were some improvements in Terre Haute, but yet there's still this huge gap in services, as is what the Human Rights Campaign discovered, and what we discovered through our research, is that there's some resources, but overwhelmingly there's a gap of services. Terre Haute was one of the lowest in the state of Indiana in resource availability. So then we decided that we needed a more comprehensive assessment for the Terre Haute community and area. And essentially what we did is we began to look for other communities that had done needs assessments in their areas. And we looked in different states to see if any states had created anything like this. Texas had created one, Washington had created one, New York State had created one, and California had created a couple. In the California one, we found that San Francisco Bay Area had created this comprehensive one, and it covered almost every aspect of life for the LGBTQIA plus community. This included housing, legal, community, and other things that were important to them. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but they were just really comprehensive. So we took this assessment and we modified it to fit into our community and our community needs. And essentially, when we were done, we wanted to give it to the Internal Revenue Board at ISU, but before we did that, we wanted to kind of fix any perceived errors. So what we did is we did two dry runs. The first one was with master students in Dr. McAllister's class, and Martina, Jordan, and myself went in and we kind of talked to them about the research we'd been doing and how we'd put the needs assessment together, and we asked them to go over it, to critique it as much as they could. And I told them to be a little harsh because we wanted to make sure it was accurate and that it was comprehensive and that it included everything. So we had them go over it for about 30 minutes to an hour, and they critiqued it and went over it and read it. And it is a 100-question survey, so it wasn't it isn't a light survey to go over in a sense. And what we did is after they went over it, we looked over their notes and we made adjustments. We discussed them within our group, including Dr. McAllister, and then we made the needed adjustments. And the second kind of dry run we did was we went to Spectrum, which is the LGBTQIA plus club here on campus, and we gave it to them, and we had them do the same thing. I mean, we talked about what our research was, what we were doing, and why it was important, and we wanted to make sure to bring resources to them. And we had them go over it and make adjustments or put notes to what they thought we could improve upon. An interesting thing that came out of this is that as comprehensive as the assessment was, it didn't include spiritual. And we discussed this as a group, and we decided that spirituality is a pretty important part of everybody's life. Whether you claim to be religious or not, everybody's spiritual to a sense, so it was important. So we added a section on that. And then we turned it into our IRB, and we're getting an expedited review because we're going to release it to students on campus. Now, that's pretty much what expedited means, is it's going to be released to students on Indiana State University campus. If it hadn't been released to them, then it would have been up for a full review. So an expedited, it won't be a full IRB review, but it will be a faster one because we're going to release to students on campus. So while we were doing our research on this, it came to our attention that students within the Vigo County School Corporation and their parents had been receiving bullying from other students and faculty members because they identified as members of the LGBTQIA plus community. And we discussed as a group whether we should get involved, and we discussed kind of this gap in the sexual education program where we teach this heterosexuality and abstinence only. And Dr. McAllister thought it would be good for us to do some research and get involved as part of our internship as an experience. So what we did is we got together as a group. We did research on bullying in the LGBTQIA plus community at schools and discriminations and things they'd heard, and then we made a document for Martina to read at the school board meeting. And we felt Martina would be a good candidate for that, as she had experienced this bullying being a member of the Vigo County, a prior student of the Vigo County School Corporation. So we had her do that, and she read it, and it was really good, and it was emotional. And we heard some other people speak, and amidst all this, I spoke because I really wanted to drive home the point that there's discrimination more so towards transgender individuals than anybody else, and that schools need to be a safe place, and they need to provide a safe space for all of our children and not just some. And in doing all this, it was interesting because we developed a cohort with some previous students of the school corporation and some current students, and also some faculty members and students at Indiana State University. So we kind of developed this cohort of connections, and it was very interesting and a very, very good experience for me. We had the opportunity to go to the State House twice. Once for lead day, and we were able to talk to J.D. Ford about the sexual education curriculum, about improving it. We actually got a meeting with him. Well, not on. I guess it's kind of it was just kind of random in a sense because we were looking for John Ford. Martina was, and then they scheduled an appointment with JD Ford. But we put this pitch together real quick about the LGBTQIA plus community in schools and how we need a more comprehensive sexual education program. And he was really receptive. And he talked about bipartisanship and trying to change the programs, the curriculum in schools. So it was a good experience. And then Martina, Jordan, and I went back on to present at ISU Day at the State House. And we were able to speak with several of our legislators, including the superintendent of schools, about our internship. And it was just an interesting experience because a lot of these people were receptive and didn't realize that there were issues, and we were able to just speak with them about how we need to do more and how we need to just about our internship and what we were doing actually. And a lot of them were interested. And then recently we've been doing safe zone training. We completed level 3 of safe zone training, so we are all four, including Dr. McAllister, safe zone trained, which gives us the ability to be an ally and create safe spaces, and it also gives us the opportunity to train. And one of the other main chunks, the main chunk of this internship, was being able to be safe zone trained and then going out in safe zone training. So we're going to do a training at Vigo County Library via Zoom. And what we're going to do is what we've learned from the 3 trainings we did, we're going to put a learning plan together, basically train on that learning plan from what we learned. And it should be interesting. And we're going to do that via Zoom. Now, our end goal is to do a training at the Landbaum Center with any organizations interested, and we're really going to put out flyers and petition people and just make sure to get people interested in it and just train everybody so that organizations within Terre Haute, like hospitals, jails, mental health centers, schools, will be able to provide safe spaces for people who identify as members of the LGBTQIA plus community. And then my goals with this internship was to become a better public speaker, which I think I've done. I really think it's been an improvement, and I think it's been a great experience. And I think I've learned to speak more fluidly to people, and I've been able to express myself more. And the other thing was to learn more about the LGBTQIA plus community. And I'll be honest about that. At the beginning, I didn't know a lot because I'm not a member of that community, but I wanted to understand more, and I want to be able to serve them better. As a social worker, I feel it's important to understand diverse populations, and I felt that this internship would give me that opportunity. And it's also taught me that it should be a continuous goal throughout my life, is to continue to learn about diverse communities and about especially the LGBTQIA plus community. And it was a good experience.